Well, I think clearly if you were a hitchhiker and were picked up by any of the lunar missions, 12 would have been the one that would have been fun to tag along on. You know, they were all these Navy buddies. I mean, like, I think Pete Conrad and Dick Gordon had been wingmates on a carrier before, you know. I mean, like, they'd all known each other, flown together, felt comfortable together, and they had a gas. You know, I mean, like, you can tell listening to the tapes from those days. I mean, they had a lot of fun when they went. And hopefully everybody had at least some fun, you know, I mean, but they're the ones that you really, there's no question in your mind. These guys had a good time.
I feel that way. I thought the three of us have always been fairly close. We've had a relationship prior to ever being in the space program. And it was a very comfortable feeling to fly together. I've always accused Pete and I of being together so often we think alike and we can communicate without speech. And it's a very unique experience. I don't think any other crew comes to that point.
We had trained as a crew. We were the backup crew for Apollo 9, and then we trained, which it was maybe a year and a half or two of training, and then we were the prime crew for Apollo 12, which is another 9 months of training, and we were real good at it as a crew.
When we first had to interface with the scientists, the paleontologists, the planetologists, and the geologists, and the seismologists, and all those learned doctors, they wanted to do all this fancy science on the moon. We let them design Apollo 12, the scientists. We said, where do you want to go? Where's the next place you want to go? Where do you want to land? You tell us exactly where you want to land, and we will land exactly there. You go plan the whole damn what you want these guys to do. What you want them to look at, what you want to find at this site. You train our crews to exactly what you need from them. You do this with the surveyor, the whole bit. You tell us exactly what you want, and we will do it.
Pete Conrad and all of us were very good friends. Pete was one of the, as many people know him, he's a very gregarious, funny, typical, maybe a stereotype of the test pilot who, you know, get into anything and fly it, that sort of thing. And in the Apollo 12 crew, with he and Dick Gordon and Al Bean were just a delight to work with. They were a lot of fun.
The rocket itself was almost like 40 stories tall, you know, and that's more than the Statue of Liberty. I think it's on a par with the Washington Monument, I'm not sure, and every inch of it is full of exploding fuel. You know, I mean, it's equivalent to sitting on top of an H-bomb or an A-bomb. I mean, or enough of a bomb to where you don't care what kind of bomb it is. I mean, you're gone if it doesn't work right.
Here we are, spent all our lives in a risk environment. You acknowledge that fact going in, and you don't dwell on it. You don't let it bother you. If the damn thing blows up, you're going to be dead. That's the least of the consequence. I'd rather do that than get smashed up and spend the rest of my life as an invalid.
Spent 6, 7 years eating, sleep, and breathing, doing this job.
Sure.
And we were really spring-loaded trained. The only time you ever saw anything normal was when you flew the flight.
Here are these guys that have spent all their lives learning how to fly, learning to be pilots, be at the controls, and during launch there's really very little they can do except for just strap in and ride it.
Getting in the spacesuit in the morning and riding the van out to the pad and riding the elevator up to the top and getting in the command module, all that is so interesting and so amazing. Just thinking about it now is kind of amazing.
They're the heart rates that they monitored in mission control. I mean, like almost invariably showed higher heart rates during launch than at any other portion of the flight, including when they would land on the moon. Because when they're landing, they're driving it. You know, when they're blasting off, they're just sitting there. And they were as scared as they ever got.
I can recall the fellow in the house of in the mission control was counting down 10, 9, 8, ignition sequence start, 7, 6. Now, he said that, but still his engines are 360 feet away, so I didn't feel anything. And 4, 3, when he said 3, then I began to feel a shaking and a rattling. And when I was observing, as I observed the shaking and rattling, it was more than I imagined. It was more than I thought was safe. And I can recall thinking, maybe this is going to come apart. Maybe this is shaking more than it should. Certainly more than any airplane I'd ever been on. It just was tremendous vibration. And as this ran through my head, I hear him say, 1 liftoff.
Pete Conrad reports that your program is in. Tower clear. I'm pitching a roll program and this baby is really going.
We launched on Apollo 12, and about 30 seconds into the mission we got hit by lightning. And we never practiced that. No one imagined that could happen in space. And it lit up more cautionary warning lights than had ever been on any space flight before since. I mean, there wasn't nothing close to this. And they all came on, and Pete started reading them off. And he read almost every light up there, particularly anything that had to do with the electrical system.
I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out. I'm not sure you get hit by lightning. Fuel cell lights and AC bus light, fuel cell disconnect, AC bus overload 1 and 2, main bus A and B out.
It turned out that when the lightning hit, it more or less knocked everything out on the spacecraft. But luckily, the booster wasn't affected, so the big Saturn V kept pushing and getting us up higher, and I thought we might have to abort, but there was no reason to rush into it because we were gaining altitude, which was a safer condition.
The curious thing about it is Dick, who normally gives me good advice. He leaned over, he read a few lights, and I'm thinking, maybe he'll tell me what to do. He didn't tell me a doggone thing. He went back and started talking to Pete, and so I was sitting over still not knowing what to do. Fortunately, the ground had a good idea of what had happened. They'd observed it, and they made some suggestions, which I implemented, and everything turned out okay.
Al did a great job getting the electrical system back online during the boost phase. So
That's right.
Really
That's the first time you never helped him.
I know it. I didn't know what to do. It was my vehicle, and I didn't know what to do.
Okay, we're all organized again, John. We've had a couple of cardiac arrests down here too, Pete.
I was fortunate enough, and I got onto the problem quickly enough and made the call to the flight director to fix it. And of course, he told me later, Jerry Griffin, that when the call came, he didn't think the call was going to be about a fix. He thought the call was going to be about an abort. And so it was a harrowing experience to get that vehicle into Earth orbit.
But I can tell you the adrenaline was really pumping. And it sounds a lot cooler to me now that I listen to it than I remember it. I remember it as being very, very, it got my attention. Let me say it that way.
We got to Earth orbit, got things back online, and couldn't find anything wrong with the vehicle. Seemed to pass all of our tests, and we were faced with well, that was pretty exciting, but everything is working here, so shall we come home or shall we get on with it?
Somebody had said, hey, we'd get struck by lightning, we'd decouple the command and service module guidance from the S4B. We'd go into orbit in that thing, and 3 hours later we'd be on our way to the moon. I'd say, you're crazy. You couldn't check the spacecraft out. There's no way we could do that, yet we did.
Apollo 12, Houston, the good word is you're go for TLI. Hoopy-doo, we're ready. We didn't expect anything else. We didn't train for anything else, Pete. You better believe it.
We have data and thrust is go. Burn looks good.
No, I remember looking at the window saying, I hope that doesn't break. You know, still you could see through it. I'm going to die. That's a feeling that I haven't had much of my life, that death was 5 inches away.
After a while, you'd see the moon would go by, and then after a little while, the sun would go by in the window, and after a little while, the earth would go by. And you began to understand how, back in the old days, man began to evolve his understanding of the world and the universe. We began to think we were the center of the universe because it all went by the windows as we looked out.
And I can remember looking back at the Earth and seeing it go. At first it goes away very fast, almost like the fastest elevator. And it's big and it's starting to get small, but it's going away. And you're thinking, boy, everybody's going away that I've ever known. They're going that way, and the three of us are going this way. And it kind of is shocking. And I can remember looking at the Earth when it got about that big then and thinking, you know, everybody I've ever known, they're all back there. And here we are. There's billions back there. Here we are here. And it's kind of scary, but I wanted to be there, but still kind of frightening.
We're trying all these things that we didn't have in Gemini, like toothpaste and shaving, and we're really having a ball up here.
Roger. All dressed up and no place to go.
Oh, we're going someplace. We can see it getting bigger and bigger all the time.
Dick Gordon told me that he had this trick on the way out there because, you know, when you go to the bathroom, you would save a lot of it. You know, they'd have these feces bags, you know, I mean, like that they were supposed to bring home. And Gordon used to put them in the food compartment, hoping that Bean would grab one for a midnight snack or something, you know? I mean, these were guys that they went to the moon with a sense of humor.
I wouldn't do anything like that. And hope somebody got up for a midnight snack, sure.
Apollo 12, Houston.
Hello, Houston. Yankee Clipper with Intrepid in tow has arrived on time. I guess like everybody else that just arrived, all three of us are plastered to the windows looking.
When we were falling towards the moon, I had no idea that we wouldn't fall right into the middle of it and get killed. And the computer said we wouldn't, said we'd go behind it by 60 miles. But there was no way to tell it. So there's your life and future is more contained on numbers and computer programs in spaceflight than it is in airplanes. I'd look at the computer and it'd be printing out, not printing up something, but reading out something. I'd think, I hope this thing keeps running. Because if it doesn't, we got a big problem.
Our motion to the left is not as apparent as our motion towards the moon, and therefore we have the decided impression that we're going right into the center of that baby right now. Okay, Houston, we're maneuvering to the burn attitude.
Roger, we copied that 12.
We're beginning to go into darkness at this time.
Roger, 12.
Matter of fact, we're there.
Hello, 12, Houston, you're go for LOI.
Roger, Houston, go for LOI. Burn checklist is complete to -6 minutes, and we're holding at that point.
The whole thing was as Neil and Buzz didn't land where they were supposed to. They were 4 miles from where they were supposed to. So it befell on us and engineers to figure out why they didn't land where they were supposed to.
NASA decided to demonstrate this by landing near a crater that was a specific crater, a crater where a surveyor unmanned spacecraft had landed some 33 months earlier. So they targeted us for this crater, and we targeted for the center of this crater, which was 656 feet in diameter. And I can remember us thinking, boy, I don't know where we're landing, but it'd be nice if we landed near there. Not in the middle, but we'll target there.
They picked Surveyor 3 because it was way down a Copernican ray, and they thought that the material around that came from deep within the crater Copernicus and would not be the same as lunar surface material. So that's how the site actually got evolved down to that particular Surveyor 3.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Houston out, over. Okay, it's go there, Capcom on the hot fire. Okay, all flight controllers going around the horn, gonna go for undocking.
Okay, retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. Ginsey, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for undocking.
Well, we went to the moon, 239,000 miles away, made several orbits, came down to land, and when our lunar module pitched over, Pete looked out the window and could see where we were going to land.
Pitching over at 7,500 feet, expecting to see the snowman crater pattern and seeing 10,000 craters out there. I'll never forget that, and not having the foggiest idea where I was.
Okay, you're out of 19,000 feet. I got some kind of a horizon out there. I got some craters too, but I don't know where I am yet. Okay. In a Viper P-64. Okay. I'm trying to cheat and look out there. I think I see my crater. Hey, baby. I'm not sure. Coming through 7.
I read from the computer a system of numbers, which he could look through some marks on the window with and see where, if we didn't touch it, where it was actually going to land. He looked through the window and we would land right in the center of Surveyor Crater, just where we were targeted.
Hey, there it is. There it is. Son of a gun, right down the middle of the road. Outstanding. 42 degrees, Pete. Hey, it's starting right from the center of the crater. Look out there. I can't believe it. Amazing. Fantastic. 42 degrees, babe. Just keep slide it in. Coming down at about 99 feet a second. You're looking good. Okay, go for landing. Over 1. Okay, Roger. 40 degrees, LPD, Pete. 40 degrees. So fantastic, I can't believe it.
Getting to land. That's the shortest flight time in the world, that 1 minute and 30 seconds or less, whatever it was you had on the stick. That's the only time you flew it. And I really did have to fly it. That where we were supposed to land was not suitable. It had big boulders in it, and I had to fly it a little bit further around.
Hey, you're really maneuvering around. Yeah. Come on down, Pete. Okay. 10% fuel. 200 feet. Coming down at 3. Come on down. Okay. 180 feet. 9%. You're looking good. Gonna get some dust before long. 96 feet, coming down at 6. Slow down the descent rate. 80 feet, coming down at 4. You're looking good. 50 feet, coming down. Watch for the dust. 40 coming down at 2. Looking good. Watch the dust. Coming down at 2 feet. You got plenty of gas, dude. Hang in there. 30 seconds. 18 feet, coming down at 2. He's got it made. Come on in there. 24 feet. Contact light. Roger, copy contact. Pro. Yeah, pro.
To go back to Apollo 11, a newspaper person who was a friend that was also foreign, and I thought had reasonably leftist leanings, and anyhow, we were having this discussion, and this person was absolutely convinced that the United States government propaganda office somewhere had written these great words for Neil to say.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Then I said, okay, if you think that that's the case, we'll sit down here and we'll figure out what I'm going to say. So I figured I'd say something to the effect, it may have been a little one for Neil, but it was a big one for a little fellow like me, seeing I was the shortest person in the office.
Down to the pin. Okay. Man, that may have been a small one for Neil, but that's a long one for me.
I bet this person $500, which was a reasonably large sum of money in those days. I thought that if I could get $500 off a communist, that was probably pretty good. Person then realized that there wasn't propagandists, but they reneged on the bet, and I never won the money. I was never paid.
Hey, Al, you can work out here all day. Just take your time. Dum-da-dum-dum-dum. Dum-dum-dum-dum.
I would just feel good. It's a good feeling because everything about you is lighter, and so I felt stronger. I felt like this is a great day. You know, I can jump. Look how high I can jump. Look at how light this is. I just grab this and move it over here, and normally it's pretty heavy. So it gave me a feeling of being strong and fast and feeling good.
Man, does that all back there.
Pete, now we show you're 1,200 feet from the limb.
Okay. You know what I feel like, Al? You ever see those pictures of giraffes running in slow motion? That's exactly what I feel like.
They tried to rush through and get us the first color television camera. And it was the old system, you know, it was a camera that had a color wheel in it, and for all our training, all we had was a block of wood. And I think this camera showed up like 3 days before the flight, and Al and I never laid eyes on it.
Okay, what change did you make? I hit it on the top with my hammer. I figured we didn't have a thing to lose.
Al was setting it up, and he waved the camera around, and he wound up pointing it into the sun, and it did not have a light level sensor, and so it burned the camera out.
Being on the moon is you're unprepared for visually what everything looks like. I mean, like, there's no sense of scale or distance, you know. I mean, like, even out in the desert, you know, you see a telephone pole a half a mile away, you know. I mean, to where, like, that telephone pole cues you what your distances are. There's nothing on the moon. You know, there is no way to tell how far away anything is.
Shortly after the flight, somebody asked him, how did you guys navigate on the moon? And Al said, I don't know, I just followed Pete. I had a hard time finding what the right craters, just because I didn't lose my sense of direction, but I sure wasn't really positive which crater was which.
How about a grapefruit-sized rock? That's what I'm holding in my hand, and these other rocks that I was talking to you about are pretty well buried, and they're pretty large. I don't think I could get one of them going. Houston? Roger, we copy grapefruit size or any size is fine.
Well, I mean, it's just a big round rock, and we were at the point of collecting unusual samples. Here was it.
That's not the way it goes, Pete. That was the extent of Bean and Conrad's knowledge of geology.
True. That's true.
And as much as they tried to learn geological terms, they came up with a grapefruit rock.
I thought that was very descriptive. The scientists on the ground had a very good mental picture of what that rock looked like.
Yeah, like a grape.
Starting to come in. Hey, I'll tell you what we're parked next to. What? We're about 25 feet in front of the surveyor traces.
The backup crew must have gone through a library of Playboy magazines,
right,
and kept clipping out Miss Playboy or the month or this, that, and the other thing, interspersing those pictures throughout the checklist.
Got through those pages, and I had to turn the page again, and then wound up with the Playmate of the Month, and I that one really did take me by surprise. I was not expecting that at all, and of course I couldn't say anything about it over the radio, so I was doing a lot of laughing, and people they weren't sure why I was laughing, but I don't think they wanted to ask why I was laughing either. So you know, some of the outside people thought that I was being very frivolous, and I might have even been intoxicated on the moon, but that wasn't the case at all. I was just laughing at these in-jokes, and I obviously couldn't talk about them over the air.
Well, the several times that I fell down up there, usually from backing up and hitting a rock or something like that, I would fall so much more slowly on the moon than I did on the Earth, that I never was in danger of puncturing myself. If I started to fall backwards on Earth, I'd just go plunk. But there, falling slowly without light gravity, I could usually turn around and just catch myself very easily with my hands, and then I could just push like that and push right back up.
Al and I wanted to come up with a gimmick to sort of fool the PR guys. And so I went and got a timer that fits the Hasselblad, and I snuck that on board, and Al and I were going to go over and stand next to the surveyor and have both our pictures taken, you see. And we knew that these guys would take one look at that and they'd say, man, that's the picture, and they'd launch it to the world before somebody would ask the question, who took the picture? Got out, put the thing in the bottom of our rock collecting bag. I suddenly realized that now we're going to get next to the surveyor. I got to get that timer out of the bottom of this bag, which is now completely full of rocks. And so we can't talk. We can't talk about it, so we're giving each other sign language. And the ground says, it's time for you guys to take a rest.
Get in there. Get in that bag. There you go. In the bag. In the bag. In the bag? Yeah, wait a second. Yeah, I got to zip it up. Good chill. Copy, it's in the bag.
Well, we're supposedly taking a rest, except we're hauling rocks out and holding them in our arms, and we're working our can off. And obviously our heart rate is not going down, and though they're saying, doesn't look like you're resting, what are you doing, or whatever, you know, we're saying, oh, nothing, we're resting, and our heart rate's and we're digging around and digging around and digging around. Make long story short, I never could find this thing. It just eluded me.
Yankee Clipper, Houston. Hello, Houston. Clipper here. Clipper, you were sort of the forgotten man for a little while. We're all eyes are on you now. We're with you.
The command module pilots were the only people who were ever by themselves. You know, I mean, the other two guys would go down and land on the moon, and they were real busy all the time. They had mission control talking to them constantly. So they never had time to just kind of sit back and think about where they were. But the command module pilots, I mean, like, stayed in orbit all by themselves, half of which they were on the dark side of the moon and couldn't even talk to Earth if they wanted to. So they had plenty of time to kind of sit back and just look around and realize, wow, I'm at the moon.
We did train, or I did train to return by myself, went through all the mission activities that I would have had to have operated the command module by myself as opposed to having three people. But I never concerned myself with that, and I knew they were going to come back. It would have been a very, very unpleasant day if they hadn't, let me tell you. That'd have been 3 days of pure, not terror, but real sorrow to come back alone. I don't even like to contemplate that.
I don't either.
Well, I'm sure you don't.
No?
We show you're 3 hours and 7 minutes into it, into the EVA, and we'd like you back to the LEM to start the closeout in 10 minutes. That's at 3 + 17.
At the smoke to get back to that LEM, we're a long way. Okay, and then we ought to dust each other off. Man, we are filthy. Okay, coming up the ladder. Gosh, you're shaking the whole LEM. Sorry about that.
They're back inside getting ready to go, and of course, you know, I mean, they've got their big checklist, and Bean is working like crazy, and so he's got everything ready to go about 2 hours beforehand. And he's got nothing to do but sit there and be nervous.
And the ground wasn't saying anything, and all of a sudden, I began to think, do we still have radio contact, you know, with the ground? Because nobody had said anything for quite a long period. So we called him and asked him, and Pete said to me, I can remember him saying, you getting a little nervous? I said, yeah.
But you'll get over it. I said, you know, this is your first ride. I said, besides, Al, if it doesn't light, look at it this way. We become the first permanent monument to the U.S. space program on the moon.
I said, yeah, that makes me feel real good.
Conrad had just sort of scratched that itch for a couple hours, you know. I mean, like, that's the way astronauts were, you know. I mean, and of course, you know, 12 went just fine.
Pete punches the button, 5 seconds, big bang as these bolts blow. And so looking out the window, it was like riding a very fast elevator. And so up we go off the moon. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm looking at the computer and looking out the window. And as we go up, it goes up to 60 feet, about straight up. And then it pitches over and starts to get velocity. We had to burn 6 minutes and 5 seconds to get into orbit. And there's no gauges really on your ascent stage engine to see how it's doing. The idea being, if it isn't doing okay, what are you going to do about it?
316 feet above the lunar surface. Boy, you're quality. File, I don't know what. Mark, 30 seconds. 30 seconds, 177. 1,594 feet above the lunar. That's pretty good. We're on our way. And in 1 minute, all right, 20 feet. Okay.
And Pete leaned over to me and he says, you know, Al, how would you like to fly this thing? And I thought, well, that'd be fun, because I hadn't flown it up to that time. I'd just been doing my part of the job. And so as I started to put in my first thrust, I said, wait a minute, the people down in Houston at Mission Control aren't going to like this. And he said, don't worry, we're on the backside of the moon, they'll never know it. And sure enough, he'd thought of everything. And so I flew it around a while and felt good to do it. It was just a good memory of a commander that thought about his lunar module pilot and wanted to get him to enjoy the flight.
I have heard the story about Al flying the lunar module, or Pete letting Al fly the lunar module, but we couldn't tell that on the ground. And if they did it when we weren't looking, or they did it in a way that we couldn't tell. I only heard the story after they got back. Sometimes I wonder about stories, you know, after years pass, they tend to get better and better. But I suspect it wouldn't surprise me at all that Pete turned it over to Al and let him fly it for a while.
The command module pilot is the one who's basically in charge. The lunar module is passive, and the guy comes in and docks with them and takes them home. And that's a very difficult rendezvous and docking. And the two pilots of the two ships have to know each other pretty well.
I'll say everything's tied down, but man, oh man, is it filthy in here. We must have 20 pounds of starting dirt, all kinds of junk.
Pete, that'll be an interesting zero-G.
Al and I think look like a couple of bituminous coal miners right at the moment. We're happy.
So are a lot of people down here.
We were very dirty, and was all this lunar dust was floating around in there. When we got up in rendezvous, Dick took one look at us and said, I don't let you guys in there, you look like a bunch of coal miners or whatever. So we started, we finally figured out that we'd undress in the LEM and pass it up to Dick. But the more we got undressed, the dirtier we kept getting in our underwear and everything else. So the next thing I knew, we're down to our all-together. And so not only were we the first lunar streakers, but I guess I figured that if something happened and it blew up when we jettisoned it, why, I'd go out of this world the way I came in with nothing on.
But somehow going fast again made me feel like we were headed back home. And I think that Neil Armstrong said that the time he felt like they were going to pull off the mission is when he got in orbit. And I agreed, because you're going fast again. You feel like once you're going fast, you don't have to go a little bit faster, and then you can head on home. So it was a really good feeling to get into orbit.
We have acquisition of signal.
Apollo 12, Houston. Apollo Houston, Apollo 12, en route home. Very good. Apollo 12, Houston, we're ready for TV anytime you want to send some down to us. Okay, we're trying to get into a good position right now. The thermal wand is a little bit later, but we're leaving the moon so fast we don't better kick it.
Our trajectory was such on the way home that about 100,000 miles out, it was 100, wasn't it? That we nipped in the line where the Earth fully eclipsed the sun, and we were between the Earth and the moon. And so what we had was an absolute full moon behind us, and for the first time an eclipsed night Earth, so that there was no sun, and instead of seeing a black as you see in the photographs, you don't see the night Earth. What we did see was the full night Earth in moonshine, in full moonshine. We could see the land masses, we could see thunderstorms from 100,000 miles out, we could distinguish the ocean and the clouds, and I think we're the only ones that saw that.
The command module hit the atmosphere at a pretty good speed. I mean, like, you know, essentially escape velocity coming back too. So I mean, it's 26, 28,000 miles an hour, somewhere in there. And when you hit at that speed, it's just like a meteor, and you ionize the gases around you to where you're cut off from radio communication. and normally it's about 3 minutes.
As far as I'm concerned, the most spectacular part of the mission that I experienced was the reentry and landing. I mean, that is spectacular. Coming back in at 36,000 feet per second, 25,000 miles an hour, and you are hauling the mail across the surface of the Earth.
I remember this spectacular green ionized flame pattern that is 20, 30, 40, 50 miles long. I don't know how long that thing was.
When we looked down at the islands in the South Pacific, they were going by so fast, it was unbelievable. And the dynamics of it is so rapid. You hit the atmosphere, and 8 minutes later, the parachutes are open. So it's a very, very rapid event.
Go ahead. Roger, the Hornet is on station, just far enough off the target point to keep from getting hit.
Hornet reports a sonic boom a short time ago.
I'm in Houston, and the blind air boss has a visual contact.
One of my jobs, sitting in the right-hand seat with a little window in front of me, was to take a 16-millimeter camera and mount it in the window. After the main chutes came out, take and dismount the camera and set it in a bag next to my seat. During the entry, everything went as planned, but somehow I got behind the checklist, and when it came time to dismount the camera, for some reason, I decided not to take it off the bracket and put it in the bag. When we hit the water, that camera and bracket came off the mount, which I didn't know it would do, but such a hit, and it hit me right here. In fact, I thought that if that thing had hit me in the middle of the head, it might have killed me, because it really came off there. And fortunately, it hit me a glancing blow, and apparently it knocked me a little unconscious. It was luck, because I think if I'd had a little bad luck, I could have gotten killed right there just because I didn't follow the checklist.
And what's the first thing Conrad does? The next guy to go to the moon is his best friend Jim Lovell, who's going to fly on Apollo 13. And on 12, they had gone over the landing site for 13, which was up in the mountains of the moon for the first time. I mean, Conrad and Armstrong had both landed on the plains, where it was very flat. Lovell's supposed to land up in the mountains. And so Conrad comes back and goes up to his friend. In fact, doesn't even say it to Lovell. He says it to Marilyn Lovell, Jim's wife. He says, well, you know, we went over Jim's landing site while I was up at the moon. And he says, really? What did it look like? And he just goes, you know, I mean, that's the kind of games they play on each other.
If you lose your sense of humor, if you lose your ability to laugh at yourself, in these things, and you are a bunch of robots, and you probably are going to go bananas or have ulcers or whatever it takes. So, you know, I think that a certain amount of levity is almost a requirement to keep your sanity within the astronaut group, within the ground group. And I think that we laughed at each other and laughed with each other, and I found that to be the right thing.
Pete Conrad went on to become the commander of the first crew to fly to America's space station Skylab in May 1973 and stayed there for 28 days. After retiring from NASA, he became a vice president of the space division at McDonnell Douglas, conducting research on a new generation of single-stage to orbit spaceships. Alan Bean became the commander of the second mission to Skylab in July 1973 and stayed there for 59 days. After leaving NASA, he has pursued a career as an artist, painting dozens of scenes from the Apollo missions, portraying the feeling and adventure of what the Apollo program was all about. Dick Gordon was originally slated to become the commander of the Apollo 18 moon mission, but all of the lunar trips after Apollo 17 were canceled in the budget cuts of 1972, and he never flew again. After leaving NASA, he joined a Japanese company, helping them to gather American and Russian space artifacts for a space museum and theme park in western Japan. Apollo 12's tremendous success with a pinpoint landing on the moon, flawlessly setting up several scientific experiments on the lunar surface, and bringing back almost 100 pounds of moon rocks, set the standard of excellence for all subsequent Apollo missions.
It's like a bunch of, you know, teenagers going on a camp out, you know, was sort of the attitude that they went into it with, and they really did have a good time, and still did everything they were supposed to do. I mean, did a terrific good job. You know, you can enjoy yourself in life and you know, still do a good job. And they really proved it. You can go to the moon and enjoy yourself and still do a good job.
But let's go ahead and run what I've got up there, and let's see the real story of Apollo 12.
Hundreds of hours of training mind and body for the task ahead. Apollo 12, man's second landing on the moon. For on the moon, the United States astronaut is on his own. There is no one to get him out of trouble. He is his own man, no mere puppet of the scientific community. He is an individual with no strings attached. But it is in these endless simulations that the skills are learned, skills that may one day mean life or death on the moon. And while Pete Conrad trained with great dexterity, Dick Gordon and Al Bean also felt the intensive heat of training, including emergency slide wire egress at the Cape. Now, on November 14th, 1969, three heroes struck out for the launch pad. Pete Conrad, Al Bean, Gordon. of hours of rehearsals and simulations had gone into making the countdown the precise operation it had become. Every second was critical. And there was no doubt that, barring some unforeseen disaster, the bird would leave the pad on the precise predicted second.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control. We've just passed the 49-minute mark in our countdown. We're now at T-minus 48 minutes and 53 seconds and counting. The count is going well, but the weather appears to be deteriorating. However, we are still counting. 47 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. The Apollo 12 spacecraft and that Saturn V launch vehicle at Pad A all still going well at this time. Pete Conrad has completed his guidance and control checks in the spacecraft.
The roll program and this baby is really going.
With a precision that exemplified the entire mission, the three adventurers of Apollo 12 lifted off.
Fuel cell lights and AC bus light. Fuel cell disconnect. AC bus overload 1 and 2. Main bus A and B out. Hello, Houston. Yankee Clipper with Intrepid in tow has arrived on time. I guess like everybody else that just arrived, all three of us are plastered. Shame on you.
Now it was time for landing. On Earth, scientists waited with great anxiety for this landing of the first truly scientific mission to the moon.
Hey, cloud speed coming down at 30. Looks good out there, babe. Looks good.
On board the lunar module, there was an atmosphere of grim determination, plus oxygen and a few trace elements. Conrad was determined to land at the site called Pete's Parking Lot. In switching to an alternate landing site, Conrad showed an aptitude for real-time decision-making that exemplified the entire mission.
Looking good. 50 feet coming down. Watch for the dust. He's got it made. Contact light.
It was touchdown on the moon.
I did it. Set it down. Set it down and it didn't fall over. I can't believe it. It's a nice place to land. I sure couldn't see what was underneath us once I got into that dust.
With the lunar module down safely, Dick Gordon began his lonely vigil. 60 miles above the moon, 250,000 miles from home. An unsung hero, he whiled away the lonely hours while his buddies on the moon got the glory. And what would he get? A sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that comes with his spirit of self-sacrifice. A spirit that exemplified the entire mission. Thus did Dick Gordon become the first mole astronaut. But now it was time for the first EVA. Conrad descended to the moon.
Boys, you'll never believe it. Look what I see. We're in surveyor, huh? Surveyor, yes, sir. I ask him, and where are we? Don't think you're going to steam around here quite as fast as you thought you were. Now you really got to watch your step down here.
Now Conrad collected a contingency sample and began the first of a series of scientific descriptions that would astound the earthbound scientists. Beam left the LEM next and proceeded to set up the television camera.
Come on, little fella. Let me go over here further to the side. Still is the same, Al. Why don't you try shifting the scene? Okay, and you check and see if it reflects too much, and if it does, I'll have to go stick it in the shade, and then maybe shine past the limb. Of course, that makes it not too good either, but maybe it's the best we can do. Man, oh man, did that thing deploy.
Now the two intrepid astronauts headed for the ALSEP site to deploy the experiments.
Come on, Al, we wasted time.
Then they spotted something. one of the most fascinating discoveries of the mission.
Hey, there's another one of those mounds over there. Where? What do you suppose they are? I don't know. Houston, what they are, they're just sort of mounds. Look like, don't take this the wrong way. It looks like a small volcano.
They assembled the ALSEP. While Conrad set up the lunar atmosphere experiment called SIDE, Bean began stamping down the lunar soil to make a firm foundation for the seismometer. Later, Conrad and Bean went out again. It was during this second traverse that they continued to astound the scientists with their pithy descriptions and superb terminology.
Oh, boy. Hey, Al, look, come on over here. I'm coming. Al, look at the bottom of that crater. There's some big fragments out here. It looks to me like stuff is melted in the bottom of it. You know what I feel like now? You ever see those pictures of giraffes running in slow motion? That's exactly what I feel like.
Now they set about in earnestness that exemplified the entire mission, to collect meaningful samples of the lunar topography.
Holy Christmas, what's this? Listen, hand me this scoop. Let me get some of those glass beans and stuff there. This stuff is really funny. It's relatively fresh stuff here. Yeah, you better believe it. Oh boy, I want that rock. Man, if I got the grapefruit rock of all grapefruit rocks. Well, look, I think this is Halo Crater right here, all right? But this is a 20 feet diameter. Is it right on the rim of the Surveyor Crater? I can't believe we're at the right place. I'm not sure we're at the right place here. Let me look at the top of this hill here. This is Surveyor Crater. Let me look at the chart. Yeah, I'm trying to find the right crater, Houston. I think it's that area right over there. There. Come on, Al, it's a waste of time. I don't really think this is the right place. No, I'm going in about the right direction. No, that's not it either. Well, we stop here and look at the chart a little bit. We're close. How's that grab you?
So they wrapped up their expedition and headed back to the land.
Did I get dirt all over myself? This is what is known as dirt. Man, we are filthy. What have you got all over your boots?
Now they re-entered the lunar module and prepared for liftoff.
Yeah, okay, let's quit screwing with it.
It was time for Dick Gordon in the command module to prepare for docking and stow his equipment. So once more, the intrepid crew arrived back at Earth for re-entry with an accuracy and precision that exemplified the entire mission.
Now, can you find Earth? Where's Earth? Where or where is Earth?
changed since this morning, Pete. Still calling for good weather. 1,800-foot scattered variable broken, 10 miles. The wind is out of the east at 15. We've got 3-foot waves on top of 5-foot swells.
So they returned, the crew of a mission that established a pace and style for future missions to follow. And this was a fitting conclusion, a conclusion that exemplified the entire mission.
Now, that film was made courtesy of our backup crew, which was Dave Scott, Al Worden, and Jim Irwin. So they're the producers, directors, and the cast members.